Hi everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand Extra. This is your second free show of the week here from Heart and Hand Towers. I am Cameron Bell and I'll be your host for this week's show. And joining me, a smorgasbord of talent, I have to say, from the Heart and Hand community. First of all, the ever wonderful Mr. Kevin Armstrong.
Good evening, how are you?
All good, my friend, all good. And also making up the numbers tonight as well as Mr. Martyn Ramsey. Martyn, how are you this evening?
Very well, my friend. The sun is shining. The Teds are top of the league. What more do you want?
Well, I don't know, but I'm fairly sure that you'll tell us. That's why I thought it'd be good to have you on to bring us back to earth with some of your oversalted realism, which I think everybody so enjoys.
I'm disappointed today. I'm in a good mood.
Good, I'm glad. Well, that's great. That means it's going to be a nice positive pod today. Well, we are talking obviously about last night's 3-0 win over St Johnstone at a mosaic-filled Ibrox Stadium. Kev, we'll obviously come on to the game and kind of a bit of detail and a wee bit as well and stuff as well. But in the build-up to this, I thought, this is going to be another game when I think that we're going to have a little bit of a grind. But if we stay true to course, we should be able to not make it overly difficult for ourselves. And whilst I think that we'll come on to the fact that it wasn't the most, edge of your seat performances, the result, was pretty much what everybody wanted.
It was. We went in somehow 2-0 up at half time, despite St Johnstone probably having the better of early chances. They could probably consider themselves quite unfortunate because we never really hit top gear and we took the lead through a wonderful bit of skill and then a wonderful goal that we've seen somewhere before. So from that point of view, yes, we'll take 2-0 at half-time at home any day of the week. But performance-wise, it wasn't great. Well, that's maybe unfair because the back done their job quite well. The centre of midfield done okay, but then the further forward, we just seemed to sort of get lost a wee bit. But at the end of the day, it's 2-0. We're not going to play brilliantly every week. But if we don't play well and we win games 3-0, we'll take it every single week from now until May.
Martyn, Kev made the point there that St Johnstone maybe opened up slightly better of the two teams, where there was an early scare with Henry through in goal with Turner, Balogun left and right, which ultimately didn't come to much. But it was an early reminder, had we needed one, that this isn't going to be an easy game. It wasn't going to be fairly straightforward. St Johnstone, are well coached by Cam Davidson, and they were going to get into a spot where they were going to try and see if they could bring us forward and try and get us a little bit out of shape to be able to try and open that up. And it took a set piece to be able to try and break the deadlock, a wonderful free kick from Borna Barisic to get up and over the wall from about 25 yards out. We will talk about set pieces kind of throughout the course of the show today, but I think what was interesting with that was that Borna still got a bit of confidence within that, because I would have expected maybe Tav to try and play an across towards the back post, but Borna wanted to take it, and you have to say a magnificent free kick.
There was a discussion on Sunday, wasn't there, about a free kick, and Borna kind of get shifted out the way by young Hadji, and it was one of those where there was no doubt about what was going to happen very early. He had the ball. He was always visualising what he was going to do. So no, we know he's got that in his locker. Rangers have, we have set piece threats. It doesn't always come off. I don't know a team that does manage to just pull those kind of things off all the time. But I'll be honest, I had a good feeling. It just looked a nice range. You could get up and over, or he could. I couldn't. You certainly couldn't. And it was, just, you see a free kick, you just sometimes fancy whoever's standing over the ball sometimes. And I think he was still a bit miffed from being shifted and out the way on Sunday. So and we needed it. The only wee bit of spark, I think, was the bit of play that created that free kick when we did actually start to move with a wee bit of pace. We made it count. Not so sure St Johnstone were unlucky. Henry had a chance and he didn't do particularly well after doing a lot of good work to get himself in that bit of space. McLaughlin did very well, but they know their game, and they were very attuned to that. We still take a bit of time to get into stride, don't we? And I think that's going to be the theme of the season. If we can crack that, we'll be in the race.
Well, Bournemouth has been attracting some attention, Kev, from down south. Leeds rumouring to be offering something in the region of about £8 million or so, and he justified probably some of that attention and speculation by setting up the second goal, very, very similar to the goal that he set up at Parkhead, with I think just a lovely, delicious cutback that probably went about 25 yards on its own. Pinpoint to Ryan Kent in the box. Kent, I thought at that point, had looked lively. I think, he was trying to come up with some ideas. Martin alluded there that, he'd come into a couple of tackles as well, which I think, was St Johnstone's answer to being able to try and curtail him. But he hits the connection on it exactly the same as Parkhead, sweet as a nut, straight past the keeper. We're 2-0 up going into the break, and I think that, obviously we are playing in front of an empty stadium. But I think that would have settled down the home crowd had we been there, because that second goal is pivotal to us at the moment.
It is, and it's something that we're very good at. When we pass the ball quickly, we get players moving. We're very good at football. Like you said, we've seen this goal before. It was very similar to the one at Parkhead, and I think was the week before it was maybe Easter Road. I'm thinking that there was a chance very similar to that as well, that it maybe whistled past the post last season. Like you say, the cutback's perfection. All the weight's on the ball. It's on the pass. So Kent just has to direct it. And for some reason, I don't even know what foot Kent's better with. He seems to score the last couple of weeks with left. I always thought he was right-footed, and he might well be, but he's definitely got a wonderful shot with his left foot. And like you said, if there was a crowd there, they would have probably been getting a bit antsy. We weren't playing particularly well, but that goal would have just settled us down, settled the crowd down, and we could have enjoyed half-time, because we were in control of the match. There was no chance of St Johnstone running away from it. They, like you said, they tried to even it up with some sort of roughhouse tactics, which included a co-carry ride for young Hadji, which apparently is now the rules where you can do that, which must be one of these new FIFA rules, because I've never seen anybody else get away with it. But you've got to expect that from these teams. They're not here to make life easy for us. They're not here to let us play football and take 5 and 6 off them. Sometimes that's all they've got, but St Johnstone done what they set out to do, and unfortunately for them, they were 2-0 down at half-time.
Martin, you mentioned obviously we do have some set-piece talent within the team. We come back out into the second half, a few minutes into the second stage of the game, and a corner comes in from Tab, met by Joe Aribo, who I think has put a little bit of kind of gain and muscle on in terms of across the COVID break, as I suppose we kind of call it now. Gets in there by the front post and then nods past Parish, and I mean the game, I think, at that point was looking pretty comfortable anyway, but this, I think, killed it dead. A great corner coming in. Aribo makes the run to the near post. Looks simple, fairly straightforward, but he still has to create the space. He still has to beat his marker to the run and just get the connection. Amazing what you can do when these set pieces work for you.
No, I know. I don't know how many people had the instant reaction, that's a great corner. I think if we were in the ground, there might have been a few, for fuck's sake, because it was low and it didn't look like it was going to be great. And then all of a sudden, Aribo kind of comes from nowhere. The game done. So clearly premeditated. I think we try that quite a fair bit. It's a hard one to come off, isn't it? The low corners are the kind of bane of the DAS, really. But when it works, it all looks so simple. If you lost a goal like that, can you imagine Ian Hogg in that group chat? Because that is dreadful defending. But just quick thinking by Aribo, I think I said it in one of the other shows, it's so much, I won't say riding on him or on his shoulders, but I think I'm excited anyway to see what he can do in season 2, basically, once he's now settled in. You've mentioned the bulk, which is important, and playing where we want him to play, with allied to the close control and skill that he has. then it's a big factor in us winning these type of games. Now, Rangers doing that in August, no big drama. Rangers beating St Johnstone in February, once that calendar's turned and the pressure's different, and it is. We've seen how we have fallen to bits the last 2 seasons. You're needing those players to trust those skills and kind of deliver. And just a quick word about the second goal. As beautiful as Borna's free kick was, that's what we need to see more of in these kind of games. That pace came from seemingly, again, nowhere, because we were getting quite flat and a wee bit sluggish, and suddenly there was a change. I think it came from Hadji a wee bit deeper, if I'm
It
right.
did, yeah.
Remember.
Came via Aribo into Hadji, then Hadji
and that's fine. Yeah. If you can spring the fullbacks quickly, then those kind of things happen. When we're ponderous about it, and you're asking Borna to have to get in those wide corners, or if Hadji and Kent get dragged out there, but the opposition, these kind of oppositions, not really the kind of counter-attack at Parkhead that we're talking about, but these kind of oppositions at Ibrox, they have the ability to flood the centre. So it's kind of wasted. We know what happens. We know the frustration that builds when those crosses just get headed away. This season, in terms of the points that we've dropped stupidly in the last couple that we obviously can't afford to do now, it's dependent on those players thinking quickly and acting quickly and having the bravery to pass through this melee, to pass through these lines. Scottish defenders will head crosses away all day long. They're not quick thinkers. That's why, as a national game, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but not all that great. So that's what's required. We know that. We know that pace, tempo of a game probably needs to start a wee bit further back, and this Jackamara thing probably does need to be addressed. But we have a good, after that Pittodrie start, a nice run of fixtures really until we go Easter Road at the end of September. Kilmarnock at home, always slightly awkward, but it's fairly decent to try and get that freshness, because there's still players not quite at it, as you might expect for this time of the season, especially given the circumstances in which the season restarted. So, yeah, and it's fine if we can just tick over at the moment whilst trying to solve those problems that will need to be solved longer term into the season. But yeah, game done early on. Happy days. Manager can treat it like a friendly and bring on all these substitutions.
Well, that's what I want to stay with you with, because Kevin, I would like to come back to you regarding obviously comments for the referee, because I think we have to talk about that, and I think that you made an excellent point there. But Martyn, I'll stick with you just now to talk about said substitutions, because on the 60 minutes mark we make our second tranche of substitutions. Liam Balogun had went off for Philip Hollander just at the break. Reported, well, we haven't got reports yet as to the severity of that injury, but the likelihood being that he's going to have to make a decision about what we'll do against Livingston, but we'll come on to that in a minute. But Martyn, he makes as we now can, a 4-man substitution, debut for Kemar Roof to come on, Cedric Hitton comes on, Stephen Davis comes on, so does Scott Arfield in place of Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, Ryan Jack and Joe Aribo. So I'm interested to get your take on this, because in the post-match comments, the manager made mention of, it feels like as if he's now been labelled with making too many substitutions in one go. Obviously, the rule now is you can make 5 subs, but in 3 instances, he referred to the fact that last season he was being accused of not making subs. Now he's been accused of making too many, so it's kind of all over the place. But Kevin is one of the guys in the post-match last night had kind of mentioned with Hoggy and David Marshall. There has to be something here, Martyn. We've been able to try and change a significant percentage of the team, that the guys on the park, is going to impact the tempo, is going to impact what happens. You've now got nearly half of the team having to get up to the pace of the game, and a lot of that's, it's difficult to do for one player to come into. It's a very, very good substitute who can come on and straight get into the tempo of the game. Doing that with 3 guys who have obviously played for us already. Roof coming on to make his debut, but I'm still pretty sure he's not 100% match fit yet, which we saw last night. Difficult to be able to try and maintain that, but you're right, the manager just used it as it's now basically a friendly for the next half an hour. Yeah. Let's just bring them on and get some game time in them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is Gerard suggesting that Rangers fans will moan no matter what. I mean, I find that hard to believe. Yeah, it's different situations. Games we were behind or drawing last season, and he wasn't making changes. The fans were right to have some angst about that. It isn't the same as try to change a game and bringing 4 or 5 on at the one time. The game was done, and it is August, and clearly not everyone is up to sharpness yet. It was a chance. He wasn't doing that to change anything on the pitch or to change the part of the game. The contest was over, and it was just about getting some legs with some energy in them. So it's all much of a. I don't really understand what the problem is. The situations are completely different, and he was probably right to do what he did last night. It was. The job was completed. We were going to be top of the league if people need to have that goal difference thing on match day 3 of a long season. So no, it turned into a friendly because it wasn't competitive. The thing was done.
Kev, you made mention earlier on to probably some of the lax attitude of referee Anderson last night, where there was a carried code, as you say, on Yanis Hadji, where I didn't realise that you now had to run with defenders on your back quite literally and physically. I made mention there, obviously, Kamal Roof made his debut for Rangers last night and got a strong welcome to Scottish football. He's obviously played British football before, but Scottish football in particular, when Liam Gordon, about 10 minutes shy of full time, went through him in what for me looked like quite a naughty challenge, which we looked over the top. This was not long after Cedric Hitton was taken down in the box. Now, I promised myself at the start of this season we were lucky to play football. I don't want to see myself getting back to moaning about referees. I don't necessarily think that it's somewhat of a conspiracy more than overwhelming incompetence, but yet, as Martin just alluded to, match day 3, I'm already moaning about it. I think it was a penalty on Itten. I think that the Roof tackle was a red card. And, we can't, I suppose really what I'm worried about is, are referees thinking that this is acceptable? Because firstly, that it's Rangers, and it's easy to give decisions against Rangers. And secondly, is it 3-0 up? What difference does it make? Why should I send the boy off? Why should I give another penalty to make it 4? Surely the rules have to be applied no matter what.
Well, Cammy, by the referee's own admission in the interview done pre-season, they all know how important this season is. I don't really know what that means. I don't know why this season is more important than last or any other season. Who knows? I agree with you in all those decisions. There was also one in Kent out on the touchline just before he gets subbed where he absolutely got rattled. And it was, yes, we got the free kick, but there was no booking. I just can't understand why these decisions aren't being made properly. The one in Hadji, he stops, he defends the ball, and yes, he sort of backs and he's expecting a challenge, but he's not expecting the guy to jump on his back. But yet there's no foul. I don't think there's another league in the world where that would be allowed to go. And you're right, Kamal Roof, welcome to Scottish football. This is the sort of thuggery you were prone to expect now. And Ian Hogg had a message last night on the post-match show, which is get a decent pair of shin guards and pull your socks up, because these tackles are not uncommon in this league. You're right with Itten. I think he was just too honest, if anything. He tried to get up and get the ball. Had that been a Hadji, he would have had no option but to go down. But Itten's quite a lump of a boy. And if he even had been Alfie would still be rolling about just now, because he's maybe a wee bit more streetwise when it comes to Scottish football now. But we always, on Heart and Hand, we always like to highlight the referees when we win. So we like to have a word about the performance, especially when they're not in a good game, so that it doesn't look like sour grapes that we're just saying it when we lose. When we do win and we win convincingly, there was no refereeing decisions that cost us or won us the game last night. But overall, the official had a poor game. He was far too lenient with some of the tackles. And this is just what we need to overcome week in and week out. And as long as you've played football, we've all played football, and you know that if somebody's having a kick at you, then you're getting to them. And the best thing you could do is get up as much as possible, smile, and go at them again. because if they're kicking you, it's because they're scared of you and they know the damage that you can do to their team, and that's the only way they can bring you down to their level, or they can get one up on you to try and kick you and hope you get angry or go in the huff, because there's no doubt that Rangers have got better football players than St Johnstone, and that's unfortunately a tactic that 9 or 10 teams in this league have got to throw at us, because they'll never beat us at a straight up football match.
Now, Martin, one other big development from yesterday was that St Mirren were supposed to be hosting Celtic. However, that didn't happen, and the reason why it didn't happen is because Celtic player Boland goalie decided to have a quick jaunt across to Spain without, doing that whole, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Obeying quarantine laws. And as a result of that, Celtic have now had 2 games suspended against St Mirren and Aberdeen. I'll come on to you in just a second, actually, Martin. But Kevin, you were explaining just before we came on air to record that there's actually been a bit of a development here with regards the possible outcome of players not adhering to the self-isolation and COVID distancing ruling.
Yes, the SFA/SPFL Joint Response Group have put out the provision to punish players, that's not teams, that's players, who break the COVID protocols. This will also include recent breaches, i.e. Celtic's Bolingoli and the Aberdeen 8, as are now collectively known. And they've also come out and said that the return to training for clubs outside the Premiership will be delayed, and the usual mess you get with the SPFL, but I think it's something that they're punishing players rather than the clubs. One would wonder if it was us that had maybe one of our players had nipped away for 24 hours in Spain for whatever reason, that maybe, just maybe, it might have been slightly different, and we would maybe have the usual suspects coming out on social media saying that the club should be punished. But no, they're going to punish the players. How they go about this, I don't know. They're probably making it up as they go along, like they tend to do with everything these days.
Martin, this kind of ventures a little bit into your professional field in terms of what we would look for. Employee expectations is probably the best way that I can put it. Now, clearly there's been a breach, and quite clearly, Celtic have pretty much, thrown them under the bus. It's interesting where they take the moral high ground in some issues. However, let's play a bit of, devil's dick advocate for a second, right? Because I want to be able to try and see as to how balanced we can be. He absolutely broke the expectations of what happened. We don't know if he is classed as ineligible for playing against Kilmarnock, despite the fact that he knew he had left the country, went to a COVID hotspot, came back, didn't tell anyone. And I do think that had that shoe been in another foot, there would have been quite a significant amount of pressure to have, anything that we got from that game overturned because of potentially fielding someone ineligible. But that's a debate for another day. What do you think the clubs can really do in this regard? I mean, do you get to the stage of, there's a behavioural expectation, and if you don't do that, that's a potential breach of, gross misconduct, or, do you go down the road of, you have to surrender your passports, or what really do you think is a reasonable expectation here? Because I think what's interesting is the Bolingoli one is obviously ridiculous, and by and large, I think most normal Celtic fans, the 4 of them, have all collectively said, get rid of him, sack him. This is going to be a major impact to our season. So there is a degree of sensibility to what they're coming out with. But if you look at the Aberdeen situation, you are talking about young guys in their 20s who have went through a global pandemic, who are millionaires, who are going out now to go and socialise. They end up going to some sort of bar that via the track and trace and all of that, because it looks like as if potentially it's going to cause, huge ramifications about what happens next. So even if you were to say to them, don't leave the country, are you then saying don't leave the house? Or if you do go out somewhere, you have to tell us where it is, and it has to. I mean, how do you try and make sense of some of this?
Well, you can't police everything, and as an employer, you'd have to demonstrate what you've done to mitigate that. But as I said, you can't possibly control every individual employee's movements. You probably don't cancel training for a few days so early in the season, but that's probably another matter. I mean, in any other business, it is gross misconduct. But but this isn't any other business. Sacking someone means you're not going to get a transfer fee. That's not going to happen either. If they did, it would be an interesting case, considering how lenient they are in other breaches of conduct policy, and with an obvious Equality Act angle to that. But that's all academia. That's not going to happen. Look, footballers have been given a kind of privileged status through all this. We're not allowed to, or we haven't been allowed to go out and kick lumps at each other on a football field. Therefore, it probably is an understandable trade-off, thinking about the Aberdeen thing, that, well, you don't go and visit pubs that kind of Joe Public are kind of allowed to do. It's difficult. You don't want to be governing every individual's whereabouts anyway. That's runs through the heart of this, the handling of this whole pandemic. But the club's in a difficult position, and it isn't helped by the fact that the governing bodies are drafting rules after the first two incidents. Of course there were going to be incidents. Beyond naive to think that, 1st August or whenever it was we started back, it's all good. COVID's done. This is all normal now. There won't be any incidents that we will have to set some rules for. But again, our national game just being governed in the back of a fag packet, it shouldn't be a surprise, but it's just the way we do it. But yeah, it was interesting that the focus is on the individual. And yeah, I think if it was a Rangers player already, then Nicola Sturgeon's red card that we've heard about may have been brought out of the pocket. But I don't know what those regulations are, by the way. That is kind of recent news. But how on earth were they not in place prior to the 1st of August? Because it will happen again. I think it has to be the nature, the ball and goalie thing. Ridiculous. Even the Aberdeen things. You can't do that. You've been allowed to work and practice your profession. You're going to have to be maybe more responsible socially than the rest of it. But where does that stop someone getting COVID by going to Sainsbury's or something? I mean, there have to be some kind of guidelines in place, which again comes back to what are the clubs doing to kind of mitigate that. But it's all a bit of a mess.
Kev, Martyn obviously makes a number of points there, and they're all pretty much bang on the money. And I think that obviously you've got to say that there has to be an element of this where you have to trust adults to be adults, and as an employer, not as a football club, but as an employer, you have to kind of put the responsibility back on the individuals. But what I think is very, very interesting is the obviously the update which has just come out less than an hour ago regarding the individual impacts. I mean, Martyn's right. They are changing the rules here quicker than Celtic fans are changing their Twitter handle to remove the ball and goalie references. But the point here is, yes, we can get the idea that this is, but does this require some sort of, I don't want to say pit stop, I don't want to say summit, but does this require some sort of longer term revision now to say, clubs do have to be responsible to an extent for what their employees do? Because you're not just talking here about necessarily the players, you're talking about the coaching staff, you're talking about physios, you're talking about whoever, who are going to be coming in proximity with these guys. Now, if you're then saying, right, you're not taking this seriously, the Aberdeen 8 aren't taking it seriously, ball and goalie certainly isn't taking it seriously, it's very easy for the individuals to be chastised as a result of this. But my big thing with this is, what's to stop Rangers doing something similar to Aberdeen? Let's say Aberdeen, we get the same share of luck that Aberdeen have had regarding an injury crisis for strikers. So Alfredo Morelos takes a knock, against Livingston on Sunday, goes out for a couple of weeks. Roof isn't fit yet. Itten was still to see a bit more of. Why not just send a player to some sort of COVID hotspot and then say, right, let's get a delay of a couple of games? You can't just simply not punish the clubs.
Indeed, I'm on one of the 3-man or 4-man band on our preview show on the Patreon site, and we discussed this last week before the Bolingoli story broke, and I was all for Aberdeen either have to play the game, if they need to play reserve players, youth players, whatever, make them play it, or if they can't, then they forfeit. If they boys had went out go-karting and they'd all injured themselves go-karting, they wouldn't have got the game called off. They would have been simply made to play it. Now, albeit, I know the government stepped in and told Aberdeen not to play it for risk of spreading, but then they should be made to forfeit the points, because it's not fair. And look at St Johnstone. St Johnstone played one game. They were down to 10 men, and then they played the rest of the game with 10 men in their opening fixture, and then the next game was called off, and then the next game's at Ibrox. How's that fair on them? St Mirren the same. They were due to play a game, so all their preparations up in there through no fault of their own. These teams, they should be made to forfeit the points and award a 3-0 victory, and I'm not just saying that because it's Celtic. I said that the week before when it was Aberdeen players. You're right, what's to stop Rangers sending out somebody, Alfredo's away back to Colombia, by the way, we can't play now, we'll need to self-isolate, we'll need to take all the players back in. It's just not fair. It's farcical, but like Martin said, that this is Scottish football. They make up the rules as they go along, they do it on the back of a fag packet, and generally whoever shouts the loudest gets what they want, and that's usually one team. But the thought I can't get in my head is the fact that Bolingoli is sitting on that flight, reading the Daily Record, looking at the story of the Aberdeen players and thinking, what a bunch of idiots. But no, it's and then of course he's pictured in the front of the paper where one of his own supporters had sent the picture in. But no, it's an absolute farce. There should have been rules before this season kicked off, because it's not as if, like you said, it's not mysteriously going away. It's not going away anytime soon. So this should have been laid out that if your players contract it, like it could happen, like you say, and they could go to Sainsbury's or Morrison's or whatever and pick up the virus. That's fine. It's life. It happens. It's unfortunate. But if 8 of your players go out to a bar and then start bar hopping and then put themselves at higher risk, or accidentally nip onto a plane and go to Spain for a day, then they're putting themselves at a much higher risk and therefore putting everyone else at a higher risk. So there should be punishments for the clubs. But alas, it's the SPFL, and they don't think logically and they don't think that far ahead.
Just as you mentioned the Daily Record there, Kevin, thank you so much for reminding me about that. Dear Rangers, if you listen to this, please don't get into any other form of contracts like Reach to be able to try and do our match day programmes, because we hate them and they hate us, and I don't care how good the deal was, it is a wrong thing to do, and as soon as you can come out of that deal, the better. Please don't ruin the goodwill that you're building with the fans by getting into bed with people who hate us. Please do not make that mistake. Martin, I want to come to you regarding the fallout of the rescheduled fixtures, and something which I think that you made a great point on when we were at the turn of the year, which was that we shit the bed really, really quickly when we seem to gain a bit of an advantage, or we get to the top spot. Now, theoretically, by the time that Celtic kick a ball, and again theoretically, because I'm breaking one of my own rules now by saying let's go on a run rather than just taking game by game, but theoretically we could be 11 points ahead in the league by the next time that Celtic kick off. Now, I'm keen to get your take on, do you think that gives us a clear advantage with Celtic having to make up ground? Are you worried that we could become lackadaisical, and as a result of that it's going to build in a bit of a fear factor for us to be able to try and kick on? What's your kind of take, and whether that's a positive or a negative for us?
Well, the opportunity is clearly a positive, kind of weird circumstances, of course, but it just gives it an extra context. I mentioned before the Aberdeen game, obviously a tricky opening game of the season, but utter dog shit really until Easter Road, and no excuses not to be going there 100% anyway. That hasn't changed, and there are still no excuses for that. We'll see how we do as the autumn comes, because that does throw up some different kind of challenges. And that's just an added incentive, isn't it? Because you'd be asking questions of Celtic that haven't been asked before for years. I've just obviously, the way this situation has developed. They still get to play the games. They're not too far behind us. We still have that mentality. I guess it's just 2 points, and that kind of should keep the players kind of level and focused. But it won't be to them. And you need to just... My whole thing over these last 2 years is I just want to see Rangers asking them questions they have not been asked before. You can win as many trophies as you want. It's how you win them that you can fall back on that particular experience if you're put in a difficult position again. And they've had it far too easy in doing so. So any new angles we can get to say deal with that, the better. But no excuse. I'm fed up hearing about plastic pitches, and these teams are garbage. And too many years of fluffing them up to try and prepare us, I guess, for some disappointment. The Livi thing, apart from Gerrard's first season, that first game at utter shit show, we've been pretty comfortable. And the whole thing for me, what do I know, but it is about playing our game and just being brave enough to do that. Once you start talking about we need to match them in this way and that way, you're playing the game they want to play. Using Morelos so often as this kind of almost outball target man. Now he'll give defenders a hard time. They'll know they've been in a tough 90 minutes. Not as tough as some quick, intricate passing, good thinking, good execution. You can't cope with that. So this whole thing, and it starts on Sunday and all the way through the season, is Rangers players having the bravery to play our game. We have got some skillful players. No one's ever doubted that. But it's the ability to execute those skills in every kind of situation. And just remember that this opposition are 20 points behind and more over the course of a season. And that's where man management comes in, and that's where that kind of confidence building comes to the fore. I still don't think it's as acute now. I think the Rangers' problem is once they turn that calendar and start seeing a finishing line, and then we know kind of what happens. But let's ask the questions of them and see how they respond. Because they've got some awkward ones whenever they do get to play. This period that I'm talking about, they've got some awkward wee games as well.
Well, Kev, the next of our must-win games happens on Sunday at, I forget what it's called now, the Spaghetti Ad, the Tony Macaroni Arena, Livingston Arena. Jesus, I think we're going to go back to Meadowbank Thistle soon enough. As Martin says, one of those dreaded plastic pitches. I've played on that pitch. If you think it looks bad, trust me, it's even worse to play on. Now, one thing that I do want to kind of just to pick your brains over. Now, we did say that obviously Balogun went off at half-time last night. Very interested to see, obviously, if he comes back into it, then I don't know if he's available for selection, does he start? I was really pleased with what I saw from Philip Hollander last night when he came in. I thought that there was some really, really strong tackles in there. I don't know, maybe if he's found another yard of pace, he looks slightly faster to me. He looks like as if he can cover a lot of ground a little bit more quickly, but he has had a long layoff. Would you go, if you've got the two of them fit, who would you prefer starts alongside Connor Goldson?
It's a wonderful dilemma to have for the manager, isn't it? After some of the defenders we've seen over the last 8 seasons or so. It really is a embarrassment of riches that we've got in this position. Connor Goldson's no doubt the manager's lieutenant on the pitch. He'll always take the first centre-back spot. But Balogun, I didn't know anything about him. I don't think many others did. That he's really come in and impressed us, both at Pittodrie and the couple of games he's played against St Mirren. He's not had a lot to do, but like we say with Rangers goalkeepers, the centre-backs are pretty much the same, where you don't got a lot to do for most of the game. But then when you do have something to do, you need to do it well. And Balogun's come in and really impressed me. like you, Helander was never going to be the fastest, but I was impressed again when he came on against St Johnstone. He'd done very well what he had to do, because there was the one, I can't even remember what St Johnstone player was that was running through, and he tracked him back and he got a wonderful tackle in. For me, I would start Helander if there's any doubt over Balogun's fitness, because this is the squad that we've got and the squad that we've built. The manager keeps talking about the squad, and this is the sort of game where you need to use it. We know Katic is out long term, and we're lucky enough to have 3 partners that we could have if you include Big Edmondson in there. But I would start Helander, because if Balogun's played a wee bit, and if he's got any sort of knock or niggle, I would play Helander just to get some more minutes in the legs as well. Because, like Martyn said, Livingston are not a great team. We've maybe made them look good in the past by getting suckered into playing their game of long balls and scrappiness in the middle of the pitch. But last week they played Effie Ambrose at left wing back. So this is the sort of level of players that you're up against. Yes, they'll make it physical, but footballers should always be able to outpass, outmaneuver, and outskill players like this. But to answer the other question, I would go with Helander at the back, but it's a wonderful dilemma to have.
Martyn, keeping with the back of the team for a second, because I do want to talk about something which you had mentioned. I think last night, as we were talking about the game unfolding in terms of what our forwards are doing currently, I think that there's a real chance that we've got a goalkeeping dilemma now between McGregor and McLaughlin. McLaughlin, as Clive Tildesley was calling him. Please stop doing that, Clive. That's not his name. I know you're new to this, but come on, mate. But I think he's been a great signing. I think last night we did talk about it. Kevin mentioned about a couple of great saves that he made, and a couple of them point blank. You know, if Al McGregor's wearing that shirt, you absolutely don't think twice about it. I don't know if there's a case to be made that John McLaughlin couldn't be one of our signings of the season so far.
That's big talk there, Cammy. Listen, you need more than reliable backup for a goalkeeper or any player of that age. Let's be honest. He's nearly as old as us, Cammy.
True.
So it's more important that the confidence that we're taking from these outings is that you're right. Potentially, there's just no panic there. I think he would have needed to do something remarkable in a big game to say, well, you've just done what McGregor does. It's maybe a wee bit early to start having that conversation, to be honest. McGregor is the number one, and maybe his layoff would need to be longer, and McLaughlin being able to do something, as I said, really big in a pivotal moment against a tough opponent, kind of thing. He may well do, and if he has to be thrown in at Parkhead at some point, or Easter Road or whatever, that'd be fine. And I think that's what we take away at this moment in time, that I don't think any of us would be, oh shit, McGregor's out. But I think we're still a wee bit away from having that discussion. But given age, what age is McLaughlin, by the way?
32.
Yeah. Obviously goalkeepers are different, but think ahead to next season? Possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting, because I don't want to, say that Wes Fodering wasn't, a capable goalkeeper, because I do believe he was. And when he had to play for us last, when McGregor was out injured or suspended, then I thought he quitted himself well. He kept clean sheets, so I think it was there. But there has been chances that have kind of come across where maybe tough on him. I mean, I don't want to be overly critical of the guy, but I think it goes by him, whereas McLaughlin's keeping them out. And I think that's a big... I think there's a trust element when it comes to goalkeepers, where if you know the guy behind you is solid, and in our lifetimes, Andy Gorham, Stefan Klos, spoiled with goalkeepers, really, you and I have been set in our lifetimes. There's an element to that where I think that trust permeates through your defence, then going forward, and then, that's how you know that even if you do break into a 1-1 or whatever, the guy's still going to have work to do to beat your man between the sticks. Now, you mentioned, obviously going forward, we are going to likely play, all transfers and potential injuries aside between now and Sunday. Alfredo Morelos, Yanis Hadji and Ryan Kent up top. I'm keen to get your thoughts on how you feel that the three of them have been working with in the last couple of games. Yanis Hadji, I think, has come under a bit of criticism, I think, at Ramsey House in terms of where we were sitting at for his first touch and what he's been able to try and create. Is he just taking a little bit of time to find his feet, do you think, or is it potentially something a little bit bigger than that?
He's one of quite a few players that just aren't at it yet. They're just lacking that sharpness. I don't think that's abnormal in any normal season restart, to be honest. Never mind the kind of circumstances that we've come through. But as many people have pointed out online correctly, he isn't hiding. He still wants to come for the ball. He still wants to make things happen. He did make things happen in that second goal. It was just a first touch thing. It was more than a few times yesterday, and I think against St Mirren as well, where seems so out of keeping with his introduction last season. That control just wasn't there. I have no huge concerns that, Christ, what's going to happen here. I just think he, like the rest of the team, they just need to pick up that sharpness. It was just noticeable, because with the players we've got around there, the touch is reasonably good. Certainly a Rebo, that we do control the ball quite well up there. Just don't move it quick enough for me. But it just kind of stood out. It jarred a wee bit. And it was more than once, wasn't it, last night? But no, there's clearly talent there. It'll just take a wee while to get that confidence back a bit.
And Kev, I mean, towards the tail end of 2019, we obviously picked up points in the road against Livingston. A 1-0 win, a 3-0 win, I think. A 2-0 win, I beg your pardon. I don't believe it is necessarily an easy place to go, and I do despise that pitch. But I've got to find myself, wholly agreeing with Martyn, and we can't use these things now as an excuse, whether it's the physical nature of the game, whether it is the pitch, whether it's something else. I expect to see another performance, and do you know what? See if it's a routine, fairly mundane 3-0 win, I'll take it right now.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be sexy, does it? It just needs to be about getting points on the board. Like you say, it's difficult to play on that pitch. It's not nice, but at the end of the day, it's a case of the yard. It's not going to change between now and then. So we just need to get on with it. We've been back in this league for a few years now. We know about this pitch. We know about the Rugby Park pitch. It's old now. People won't accept it as an excuse, and there should be no reason for it. As I say, we've got far better players in Livingston, and if we play even probably the standard we played against St Johnstone midweek, we're good enough to come away with all 3 points. I fully expect us to do so and just tick another one off the list and just build this wee run going. I'd said on last week's preview show or even this week's, there's that many games, that I don't want us to shout about anything from the rooftops. I just want us to win, get 3 points and move on to the next game. Let everyone else do our talking, talk about us, talk about them, do what they need to do. We just need to build up momentum, keep going, hopefully get another clean sheet and keep plodding along, and before we know it, we'll be at the business end of the season and hopefully we'll be in a really good position, because like you boys spoke about earlier, this is the chance to put all the pressure back on them. They've already got most of it, but when we've been there, we've been in situations where we're games behind, points behind, but you would always rather have the points on the board when you've got to go against stuffy teams and they know that you're so far behind and you need to catch up. It does add extra pressure. So go here on Sunday, pick up the 3 points, and then plan for the next game, which is Kilmarnock at Ibrox.
Well, with that in mind, I will now trouble you both for your prediction on Sunday. Martyn, I'll come to you first, please.
2-0 to Rangers.
2-0 to Rangers. Kevin?
I was going to say the same, but just to be slightly different, I'll say 2-1.
Oh, the clean sheet run is over thanks to Mr. Armstrong. Okay, well, it's your fault if we concede to Kev. I'll go 3-0 since Martyn picked 2. I kind of fancy 2-0 as well, but I'll say 3. I'll go for a Kamaru hat-trick. There you go. I'll be nice and super positive about it. Now, boys, just before I let you go, can I just ask, have you had a chance to visit the brand new Ibrox megastore yet across in the wonderful home of football, Ibrox Stadium? Have you had a chance to go into the shop?
Not yet. I've done all mine online, and I think I've put enough money in for this financial year.
For this financial year until you can get a visit from Santa. Maybe you and I have got big birthdays coming up this year, Martyn. So
sad. I don't really want to talk about that. But yeah.
No, we won't talk about that. Kevin, have you had a chance to nip over?
I've not. I was asked to go and help out putting the flags out in the stadium last week, so I did get to have a small peek, but I didn't actually go and manage to do any shopping because I don't fancy queuing for 2 hours. Like Martyn, I've used the online service last week to buy the black zipper. It's wonderful. The only pity is that they, like you mentioned, they've had to change the packaging to a discreet black bag as opposed to the original packagings because of some damage that was occurring to them. But no, I know a few people have had issues with getting their strips, and that's not acceptable. But the shop itself and some of the stuff they're producing is wonderful.
No, it's now a week old. I was fortunate enough to be involved when the store was opened last week, and I've had a chance to be able to try and go in. The queues have been absolutely phenomenal, and I think fairly reminiscent, if I'm being honest, of the number of times that Rangers fans have put money into the club, and not just in terms of the most recent last few weeks, where through season ticket renewals and MyJails, there's been a whole ton of money being able to go in, and as Kevin made mention there's people queuing for hours to be able to try and get into it. There is a lesson, in my opinion, Martyn, for Castore to make sure that they get some of the customer service side of things fixed. They can't send out stuff in branded bags because they're likely going to get damaged, but also we know people who still to this day have not had their top. That side of the business really needs tidied up a wee bit.
Tidied up's one way of describing it. It's not been good enough. Really disappointing because the product is quality, and all you want is what you've paid for, especially if you paid for it a month and a half in advance or whatever. I imagine they've been caught out just by how big this demand is. I'll be honest, I think the club have been caught out by just how wild the demand has been, because for reasons we know all too well, there's not enough evidence in recent years to kind of use that as a basis for generating that kind of response. So, but that's no consolation if you're still waiting, and especially if it's for kids. I've been alright. Everything's arrived when it was supposed to, but I'm nearly 40. I would have got over having to wait a couple of weeks. But if you're 7 or 8 and you're just desperate to get out there and pretend you're a Rangers player, really is what you did at that age. It's really disappointing. So all we can hope is exactly that they do learn, and as the relationship kind of gathers speed and momentum, we're not talking about this time next year.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of put everyone's mind at rest as well, we have at Heart and Hand, as you know, we've got a healthy working relationship with the club where we can provide feedback to this. We've done so in terms of both to the club and also to Castore. We know that they are working on it. It's fine to work on it, chaps, and there is a lesson to be learned here. But if better never stops, and you truly mean that, then make sure this doesn't happen again, because people are disappointed with it, and it's certainly a small percentage, but even 1% isn't acceptable. So, yes, we have raised it, and thank you to the people for sending that across to us. But again, like you say, lessons absolutely to be learned. So let's make sure that they follow suit on that. That's us for this week for Heart and Hand Extra. David will be back on Monday with the flagship show. However, you needn't miss out on Heart and Hand too much. If you'd like to join ourselves and 5,000 other bears across our Heart and Hand Patreon site, please go on to patreon.com/Heart and Hand, where you can hear the wonderful Kevin Armstrong on the preview show. The Time Capsule, which Martyn hosts, is a wonderful show and has very recently produced a book. Martyn, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I thought you'd never ask, Cammy. Yeah, the 50 Greatest Rangers Games, of course, voted for by the Heart and Hand community, and I've written about all 50 of them in order, and really just about why Rangers fans have voted in that way and why these games mean what they do, and try to make sense of how we do our history and could we do it a bit better. And that's available on the website, cheaper than it is on Amazon. But please avail yourself of that. It is good.
I can vouch for that, and I'm certain Kevin can as well. It is absolutely brilliant, and not only the selection is very interesting, and I don't think the author minds sharing the fact that he might not agree with all of them. What he has done is a wonderful job of talking about them. So please go on and go into heartandhand.co.uk if you want to be able to try and buy Martyn's book. Or again, as I say, join the Patreon site. We are fortunate enough to be given fan media access to the games behind closed doors, which David does his own kind of roving reporter bit from all the games at Ibrox. You'll have heard them if you're on the site, speaking to Follow forum owner Mark Dingwall, and also hearing David talking directly to Stephen Gerrard in the post-match comments. So some great stuff there, and it's very, very much helping fill that void of us not actually being able to be in the stadium. So all that's left for me to do is to thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee, Mr. Paul Myers, my two wonderful guests, Kevin Armstrong.
Thank you, chaps. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And Mr. Martyn Ramsey.
Thanks, Cammy. Thanks to the listeners. Enjoy your weekend.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great weekend, folks. Let's get 3 points in Livingston on Sunday, and enjoy yourselves and stay safe. Thanks all.